for joining Think, Build, Launch, the podcast. This is an extension of Marl Accelerator. Marl is an early-stage accelerator fund for startups developing deep tech products and services for enterprise customers using 5G technology. For mobility, AR, VR, autonomous, robotics, and logistics, we invest in the next generation of founders reshaping the world of enterprise. Our program, Think, Build, Launch, features members of the Marl community, including founders, service providers, and investors. Today's program is called Elevating the Game, Innovation in Athletics, with one of the Marl founders, Max Montrey. Max Montrey is CEO and co-founder of SportsTrace, a sports technology startup that uses AI to turn video into ways for athletes and coaches to succeed. Max's work in software and technology has spanned several verticals, including finance, healthcare, e-commerce, information security, and cloud operations. Prior to founding SportsTrace, Max worked for Microsoft, as well as several other startups. He's originally from New Jersey and currently lives and resides in Seattle, Washington. And for anybody that's lived in the Pacific Northwest, I think we're all a little envious of the beauty and the wine and the skiing and so many things. So it does make sense that there's a sports technology coming out of here. Welcome to the program, Max.
Jennifer, thanks for having me on. You did miss in the Pacific Northwest, though, the rain. That's what everybody's missing out on as well. So.
Oh my gosh! See, I'm trying to, good marketing is we just focus on the top. And but you do get used to the rain, and it is very beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yep. In terms of starting the program, I wasn't sure to start with your history in athletics or the business itself. So let's start with talking about SportsTrace and how you came to that, and then please go into your personal experience in athletics and why this made sense as a startup.
Yeah, it's intertwined, actually, Jennifer. So my background in athletics, full disclosure, no one has ever paid me to play baseball or any other sport for that matter. That said, it's been a lifelong passion of mine. And actually, when I was at Syracuse, I was the coach of the women's softball team for 1 year as they were bringing that program back up online. So I had a familiarity with diamond sports, and I'd often wondered, what could I have done to get better? I knew that there had been advents in technology in the past. Just the idea of video gave people the opportunity to really, look at what they were doing from a performance perspective and how their bodies were moving in the sport that they were performing in, how they could improve what they were doing right, consistent, and incorrect. But that doesn't really scale. What we found for video was that, at the end of the day, you're watching a video for almost twice as long as that video actually is. So like 2 minutes for every minute of video just to do that analysis at a bare minimum. So I combined my background in software and technology, where I created quite a number of different solutions. Some of them were around AI and video, but most of them were around just, software and data processes and this love of sports. And I said, how would my life have been different if I would have had any of these technologies around when I played? And the results were really interesting, right? That's how we came to pass and create SportsTrace.
Well, so this program in particular, we are recording in Rochester, New York, and part of the challenge is how do we like to say in Rochester, New York, is that we're exporting ideas and importing capital. So building the bridge with Marl is something that's been really, really wonderful. But I had no idea until you just told us that you have a background in Syracuse, that you're even closer to us, which is really incredible. And I do love the idea that it's really neat when you hear a coach say, how can I be better for my athletes? Very personally to try and do that the best way. And so statistical data analysis is a really critical part of SportsTrace. Mm-hmm. How does your team leverage data to really help these athletes and coaches train smarter? And what insights have they gained or will they gain? I'm not sure how new this technology is.
Sure. Well, the more you listen, the more you'll hear about how folks are using data in sports. And the first thing I like to say, and it's not just because I was a coach, but it's because the coaches in my life were so instrumental to, forming me as a person. Mm-hmm. We're not out to replace coaches. We're just here to help. And Jennifer, when you ask, how are we helping? One thing that's interesting in a lot of the technologies that we saw is they're very outcome-based. Mm-hmm. How fast did I throw the ball? How far did I hit the ball? That kind of stuff. We're interested in what's the body doing consistently or inconsistently to produce those kinds of results? We hone in on that consistency and inconsistency, and we say, hey, this is within range, this is out of range. Here's something for you to look at as a coach. And if you want to take it to the next step, here are some recommendations for improvement. So along that entire line of, a coach, how far does their eye scale? Well, it's literally just at the person that they're looking at. But when you've got a team, when you've got a league, when you've got an entire facility, that scale becomes very difficult. So we're trying to pinpoint those areas, tell a coach, this is what you can be looking at, and then take the next step and say, this is what we would recommend to improve a condition.
Wow. I love your point that I have athletes in my house. We have ski racers, soccer players, and lacrosse players. And I've always been the kind of parent that really cares about the assist and also the conditioning. Does your technology impact or tell anything about conditioning before the game is played?
Yeah, it sure does. And we have the ability in our software to set that up in a variety of different ways. We've had different kinds of training facilities set up. We call them simple evaluations, but they're basically homework for athletes. These are the 10 things I'd like you to do in advance of our next time together. Then we automatically generate some different kinds of recommendations. Some of them are like training-based. Some of them are skill-based, where that's generated based on you. It's that level of personalization that, frankly, between you and I, the internet doesn't necessarily provide.
Well, you and I in the world now that this is such a popular program. That's so interesting, though. Like, in a way, many people may have tried Noom for weight loss, right? And the idea of iterated messaging and constant education. Is there any element in SportsTrace that is, I'm just trying to think for listeners that don't have access to it. I guess there's a couple. This is the first time Max and I have actually met each other. And I'm so fascinated by him talking. It isn't just about when you hit the ball. It's really about all the things that get you to before that. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, how do you create the content for this? And
sure.
That there's data, content, and then insight, right? Those are 3 different stages.
It's true. So first, Jennifer, I'd like to say that if there are any listeners out there that don't have SportsTrace currently, the first version is free. You can go and download it in the App Store right now for individual athletes and coaches as well. Second, if we think about, from the perspective of how we're first evaluating, it's a full-blown AI solution. That's something that we're pursuing a patent with right now. Wow. Recognizing in 3D how a body moves from 2D video that your cell phone is producing, processing that up in the cloud and saying, all right, now that we understand your body in 3D, now we're measuring it. All kinds of angles, rotational velocity, linear distances and velocity. And then on a sport by sport, activity by activity basis, we're analyzing those measurements and saying, these measurements are very specific to, say, hitting a baseball versus pitching a softball. From there, again, going through how consistent or inconsistent that is, because, Jennifer, there's really 2 kinds of measurements for the human body that we perform. One is you against you. There's that consistency measure. Swing by swing by swing, pitch by pitch by pitch. How consistent are you? But then there are some things that I would call more like industry standards. One of those that we measure is kinematic sequence. It's a fancy word for how your body rotates when you either throw or when you hit, and it's universal to a lot of the sports that we currently cover. And there are some standards within that measurement that should be adhered to. So we've provided different assessments there.
Wow. And in a way, I feel that you might be democratizing this experience. I remember, when Tiger Woods was doing the training, it was clear that there was this way. And for golf in particular, I think there was a real heavy push for that. And you're actually making this accessible for coaches and individuals if they want to take that kind of initiation. I think that's really generous of you to have that. What we usually do, once we post this podcast, people are listening, it will be with the blog. And so we'll be sure that that any of the references that you're including will be included as links, which are there. I think one of the things, though, there's two aspects. Well, there's three. There's you're an athlete. Then I learned that you're a scrum master as well, right?
Yeah.
And then the third is that you're an entrepreneur. So we have a little bit about the athlete and the why of what you're doing here. Talk about, as a certified scrum master, how agile project management methodology has contributed to the development and implementation of this.
Sure. And before I get into that one on the democratization side, I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer. Everybody's got a phone in their pocket. Why not put it to use, right? And everybody's got 4 walls on their training facility, but why not see if we can break out of those walls to help with effective scale in business? But talking about my background as a Scrum Master, that is one area, one small area where I've participated in. We'll have to go a little ways back into the details. In 2009, when I was working with another engineering team, I was an engineer, and I was curious about this agile methodology they were using, so I snuck my way into a certification class. Came out with the certification, understood enough, but now at this point, I have implemented that for very large organizations at like Microsoft and some others outside of Microsoft. But when we use it at SportsTrace, being agile is super important to us, especially in the entrepreneurial journey, right? We need to have that kind of flexibility. We need to be able to see the kind of demonstrable results, not just in the kind of velocity that we have, the accuracy of costing, but the way that we're doing work as a team and what that roadmap looks like going forward, like a full-blown release plan.
Okay, that makes so much sense. And then also, how important is the user experience in the development of customer-facing products like your SportsTrace?
Wow, it's huge, right? And you're always going to have the qualitative and subjective, which we're actively soliciting feedback from users at all times. You can contact us directly through the app or on our site. We encourage it. And then there's the quantitative, right? So things that we're measuring, the ways that people are using the application from the point of time where they sign up to the point of time where they're uploading videos. And we've tried to bring that experience along to help prompt users there. It was one of the early things that we saw. I mean, sometimes you can fall into that trap of, well, I use this every day, so I understand how it works. But, the users out there, in some ways, they're experiencing that for the very first time. So you need to put yourself in their shoes first.
At the same time, like the river is not staying still, so you can't, everything is moving in the world of sports technology. Innovation is constant. How does SportsTrace stay ahead of the curve and continue to evolve as these needs are so dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, in my career, generally, I've been super fortunate to work in some pretty advanced fields of technology, at least consumer technology, right? Go back working in e-commerce, like information security is such a big field right now. And then you talk about like AI in sports, right? Like how we're processing video, computer vision, full-blown like processing models for the data that we get. We just have to be super diligent about it. Like we've got a good partnership right now with Azure around how we use their services, and we're constantly experimenting with new and different ideas. This might not even necessarily be things that the users see on the front end directly, but perhaps indirectly in the way that we process data, the way that we connect to the data for them, and the inferences that we make and the insights that we get back.
So we've talked about you, as a coach. We've talked about you in terms of your, agile. What I'd like to focus on now are, could you please share some insights in the challenges you faced as an entrepreneur?
Where do I start?
Maybe the top 3 challenges. And as a great athlete, you have absolutely set up a plan and conquered them. But for our listeners,
no, this is great. So, one, like, don't be afraid to fail. Right? I've worked with lots of different folks there, and saying like, you have to try something. It's good to get something for people to react to. The number one reason we actually have a mobile application right now was a pivot for us to better explain what our technology does, believe it or not. We said, well, if we could put this into somebody's hands, the service that we built, that's great. So that's number one. Don't be afraid to fail. Try different things. The second one, I say this to everyone that I mentor, and it definitely applies in the entrepreneurial journey. If you think about it, when we really went full steam, it was 2020, just about when the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And I was out having hundreds of virtual conversations. Folks were like way more open to talking virtually over Zoom and other similar technologies. But I would say that just generally in life, like be open to networking. That one conversation that you had 2.5 years ago may be important right now, or you can find a way to help somebody else and just kind of give back to the community. So I would say in that, like definitely keep networking and find ways to do it. I was just at an event yesterday, in fact. Third challenge, know how to do things with less, right? And that's probably at the core of the entrepreneurial journey, I would say. Because, as you mentioned, I work for Microsoft, where they have quite a few resources, right? So it's slightly different for SportsTrace. We needed to find ways to do things really fast, whether it was from a technology perspective, start with like a super minimum viable product that we're scrapping together with things off the shelf versus, once we vet out that idea, then building it, like making it whole with our own code. Great. Like that's a huge journey there, but starting out with doing things with less. Two, how do you build out the entire like go-to-market strategy? Obviously, we don't have a 300-person sales team, for instance. So what are the different methods that are effective for us in being able to get our name and our brand out there?
That's great. Well, being on a podcast is a really great way to be one of those, to do that, which is great. Now I'm going to ask you to be a bit of a futurist. And I'm going to go macro, and then I'm going to have you go micro. Please share in this industry, what trends do you see in sports technology at large? And then the second, please go into your goals for 2024.
Yeah, sure. So sports technology at large, first, you got to make a differentiation because a lot of things get lumped into sports technology, right? Like, esports, gaming, gambling, believe it or not, concessions, and how you manage fans. So let's focus on the training aspect. I see that getting even more personalized than it is right now. Right? We can definitely target the individual athlete, sport, and activity that they are currently pursuing. And your scenario is very different than the next person's doing the exact same thing. So getting even more personalization there is key. In addition to that, I see there's so many different great data sources out there. As I'd mentioned before, SportsTrace is focusing on how the body moves, but there's a lot of outcome-based type of data tracking that we integrate with for certain customers. There's a lot of upfront things in terms of health and wellness, like sleep, general nutrition, etc. Look for all of those things to kind of start to coalesce around a singular experience. In terms of 2024 and what's SportsTrace looking forward to, well, I can tell you at the end of 2023, we're fortunate to be invited to the Major League Baseball winter meetings. So we'll definitely be there. And we hope that springboards us into 2024 with some, great new opportunities and folks that we've met. Again, networking is key. If we think about it from the product perspective, I think some of the experiments that we've done with some nascent technologies like the OpenAI service and how it interacts with our data in a secure and private manner will be really key to providing even better results than we have right now.
Wow, that's amazing. You have been listening to Max Montrey, CEO of SportsTrace. We'd like to thank the Marl community of partners. I also want to thank our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at Rockfox Studios. And if you have an idea or want to know more about our program or the Marl Accelerator, please contact me, Jennifer, at marlaccelerator.com. We'd love you to subscribe and share our program, and we will continue to share insights on how to frame your value proposition, raise capital, and design for scale. This is Jennifer Sertle. Thank you for joining us.